Hello again, watch friends. Welcome back. I've been wanting to review this Hamilton Khaki mechanical for a while, but I'm just now getting around to it. The watch is no longer in production, I think, but is still widely available. Also, there's a newer, upgraded, and slightly more expensive model, which I'll also describe. First and foremost, I consider the Khaki a simple watch. I'm not being pejorative here when I say that. In fact, that's a good thing. The watch is simple in form and function. It's easy to read, tells the time and date, and uses a robust movement that Hamilton has been using for quite a long time. That's it, really. Now, let me tell you about the watch and why I like it, and perhaps what I think could be improved. The Khaki is a mechanical rather than an automatic watch. I think the name was a dead giveaway. I know some people enjoy a mechanical watch and others loathe them. Maybe that's too strong a word, but dislike might be a better term. I like mechanical watches because of the more intimate connection I have with them, as I have to wind them each day, unless of course they have a 5-day or a 7-day power as part of my daily routine. This is especially true with higher-end watches that may have superb finishing on the movement. But for me, it's still true, even for more pedestrian or utilitarian watches. Not to equivocate or anything, but I also like automatic watches that, once they're set, I don't need to think about them for as long as I'm wearing the watch. I just know that they will keep on self-winding, and when I need to know the time, a quick glance will provide it. The downside for me is that when you see the movement in an automatic watch, the rotor often obscures the details. Our story starts towards the end of World War II. During World War II, the British Ministry of Defense decided that their soldiers should be equipped with watches that were accurate, waterproof, and legible. This was in contrast to the array of watches that many soldiers brought with them from the civilian life. So a set of requirements were fashioned by the MOD for these durable and reliable watches, and an order was placed to, primarily, Swiss companies to produce them. Approximately 150,000 watches were produced by these 12 companies, including a British watch company called Vertex, and these watches are collectively called the Dirty Dozen. Likewise, in the U.S., Hamilton, Waltham, and a few others were selling military-style watches since the Second World War, right up through Vietnam. After that, Hamilton switched their focus to the civilian market, still with the military-inspired watches, or what we would now consider a field watch. The reason I mention the Dirty Dozen MOD military watches and Hamilton's early history is because they are the forerunner of today's military-inspired field watch, of which this podcast is all about. Here's the original Vertex watch from the 1940s, and the modern recreation of it that came out in 2016, brought about by the great-grandson of the original company's founder. So what is a field watch? Much like the specs the Brits came up with in the 1940s, a field watch can be thought of as a simple military watch which typically has a black dial, luminous hands, has a shatterproof crystal, and is shock resistant. With their easy-to-read Arabic numerals and simple dial, the field watch fulfills its purpose, which is to tell accurate time. Loosely defined, there are quite a few field watches to be had. Some come closer to the original military watch, like this inexpensive Seiko SNK 809. I did a review of it, actually 2 videos, one on the watch and one on how to calibrate it. I think it's an attractive and I still wear mine occasionally. Another further afield example, pun intended, is the Seiko Alpinist. Sure, it's not black and it looks a little unhumble, but when it was designed in the 1960s, it was meant for Japanese mountain climbers who needed an accurate and robust timepiece. I guess you could say those mountaineers were using a watch in the field. I did a video on the Alpinist as well. Some other notable examples of field watches are available. These include the Weiss 38mm standard issue field watch, which has a movement based on the manual wind ETA 7001, otherwise known as the Perso, a water resistance of 100 meters, AR crystal, and sapphire see-through caseback. Also has black dial and Super Luminova BGW9 coating on the hands and numerals. The Weiss sells for about $1,150. Another example of a field watch, one that I don't think is still in current production at this time, is the Tudor Heritage Ranger. Powered by an ETA 2824, this 41mm watch is very easy to read. Black dial, sapphire crystal, 150-meter water resistance, all maintain the field watch specs. Luminous hands, indices, and Arabic numerals are present. These are now selling in the about $2,500 price range, I believe. And if you think the Tudor Ranger is the field watch for you, here's another discontinued one. The Seiko SARG 011. The SARG uses Seiko's ubiquitous 6R15 automatic movement, which has hacking and hand winding. This 41mm watch has a sapphire crystal, 100-meter water resistance, and fantastic lume. It's Seiko's Lumibrite. This thing is a lume monster. It may be a little bit large for a field watch, but it's cool nonetheless. I did a review of this watch. It's my own watch. I mentioned the manual winding earlier, so let me start with that. The crown is large, maybe a little larger than you'd expect, but a really nice size and very easy to grip. Winding is very smooth and has just the right amount of tension to get a satisfying wind, which takes me about 20 or so winds every morning when I wear the watch. The crown is connected to a brushed case measuring 38 millimeters and is only 9.5 millimeters thick. The slimness is partially due to the lack of a rotor, so another bonus for manual wind watches compared to automatics. Lug width is a standard 20 millimeters, so many easily available straps will fit, including my two-piece army green faux NATO. The strap that originally comes with the watch is nothing to write home about. I'm not even sure where mine is, but I almost immediately swapped it out with a two-piece NATO I picked up from Long Island Watch and haven't looked back. Lug-to-lug distance is 47 millimeters, making the overall size and comfort of the Khaki just about right for me and my 7.5-inch wrist. Some people claim the lugs are a little bit long, but not an issue for me. There's no see-through case back here, just a utilitarian screw-down affair with the usual info around the perimeter and Hamilton and the letter H in the center. Oh, and there are drilled lugs making strap changes just a little easier. But why oh why is the water resistance only 50 meters? I mean, this is a field watch after all, meant to be used in the field. Even the newer version, which I'll briefly describe later, has only 50 meters of water resistance. I think Hamilton's Swatch Group missed the boat on this spec. Hamilton has been a well-known watch brand since 1892, when it was founded in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and since the 1970s has been part of the Swatch Group, a diversified Swiss watch corporation with other brands such as Omega, Breguet, Longines, Glashütte Original. As such, they have easy access to any of the ETA movements that are owned by, and now mainly supplied to, Swatch Group watch brands. My Khaki Field Mechanical, model H694190, is driven by the ETA 2804-2 movement, which is a marvelously simple hand-wound movement that hacks. The second hand stops when the crown is pulled out, so as to allow setting the watch exactly to a known time standard. The caliber 2804 is also used in a number of other watches, many that are from brands outside the Swatch Group, including Laco. A similar movement, the ETA 2801, which lacks a date, is also used by brands such as Panerai and Meistersinger. The caliber 2804 runs at a quite typical frequency of 28,800 beats per hour, or 4 Hertz, has 42 hours of power reserve, and can be serviced almost anywhere due to its prevalence in so many watches. When wearing my Khaki, I wind it every morning, taking about 22 winds. On the time grapher, I see that I'm getting about plus 11 seconds per day, which is not bad considering the watch is fairly inexpensive, about 5 years old, and has not been regulated. That's about a minute per week fast. I can live with that. As to likes and dislikes, let's start with the likes. First off, I like the large crown on the Khaki. Since this is a manual wind watch, winding it daily is necessary, and the crown allows a good grip to wind the watch. I should also mention that when winding, it feels velvetly smooth, like butter. The ETA caliber 2804 is easy to wind, and it's easy to know when to stop winding. You feel some resistance in the wind. I also like the lume on my watch compared to the new watch's vintage-looking lume. I've never been a fan of vintage lume, and like the simple, straightforward lume on the hands, I have. I also like that the second hand is fully lumed, not just the lollipop counter. The date window doesn't bother me, neither does the text on the dial. The new Khaki version simply says Hamilton at 12 o'clock, which is more minimal, I guess, but I think the printing at 6 o'clock adds some vertical balance to the dial. Finally, I like the drilled lugs, which make changing straps easier than might be otherwise. A little bit surprising on an inexpensive watch, but a nice touch nonetheless. First of all, the mineral crystal does not have anti-reflective coating, so reading the time is sometimes difficult, not to mention photographing the watch. Occasionally, there is some glare that impedes time reading. Not a good thing in the field, where readability is one of the essential criteria of the genre. Second, my version of the Khaki only has 40 hours of power on a full wind. The new model has 80 hours of power reserve, partly due to reducing the beat rate to 21,600 beats per hour compared to the 28,800 beats per hour on my watch. This really isn't too big a deal since I actually enjoy winding the watch every morning as part of my start the day ritual. Third, my Khaki has only 50 meters of water resistance. Really? This is hardly adequate for a watch that will be used in the field, don't you think? Lastly, the lugs are quite long on the Khaki, both old and new versions. So although the watch is only about 38 millimeters in diameter, it wears larger on the wrist because of the lugs. Also, there is quite a large space between the case and the spring bars. This won't matter if you're sporting a NATO strap, but leaves a visible gap when wearing a two-piece strap like I have. The new version of the Khaki is officially called the Khaki Field Mechanical 2019. Case proportions and dial layout are essentially similar to my watch. There are 2 hour tracks, one from 1 to 12, the other from 13 to 24, which I like, and the sandblasted case remains at 38 millimeters. The Super Luminova is sand-colored, a sort of faux aged look, which I don't care for here, or on any watch for that matter. The luminous material is on the hands and the triangular pips at every 5 minutes. I can't say whether the new watch is any better in the lume department. I would hope so, though. The major improvement in the new watch is the movement. Instead of the tried and true ETA hand-wound 2804 caliber, the new hand-wound caliber, H50, is used, which has a much longer power reserve of 80 hours, and there is no date function. This is a welcome improvement. What is not so welcome is the same 50-meter water resistance as the previous model. The new Khaki is available in 5 different versions. Actually, it's 3 versions: a black dial, a white dial, and green dial. But the white and green dial each come with a choice of 2 different straps, so I guess you have 5 choices. And the green dial has a PVD case. The new version sells for less than $400. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share with your watch friends, and subscribe if you already haven't. Be sure to click the bell so as to be alerted of new content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.